Assalamu alaikum students, welcome back to my channel. Please subscribe my channel and let's just start the topic, that is inflammatory bowel disease. That is a very important topic in the medicine as well and in the pathology, special pathology as well. So let's just start with the topic, that is inflammatory bowel disease. What is inflammatory bowel disease? It is actually a chronic condition in which there are multiple factors that lead to this disease. Now it is as Robin says, that there is no known exact mechanism behind this disease, but there are multiple factors that are responsible for causing the underlying pathophysiology. Now let's just discuss it one by one. Number one is there is alteration between the intestinal microbiota and the host immunity, which means that if I say that there is we all know that there are normal bacteria that are lining that are called as microflora of the intestine, and they are normally present in our intestine, and there is dysfunction in the epithelium, and there are certain factors that lead to the invasion of these bacteria into the lamina propria and mucosa, submucosa. So there is alteration in the intestinal microbiota versus host immunity. Now the factors are, number one is the epithelial dysfunction. What is epithelial dysfunction? Means that the cells are adherent to each other, that is enterocytes that are adherent to each other lose their function, and there is gap between the cells, which leads to the invasion of the bacteria inside the lamina propria, or we can say that mucosa or submucosa. So how it is done is, the pathophysiology is node 2. Node 2 is actually a nucleotide oligomerization domain. It is a gene. It is a gene that encodes a protein. That protein binds to the intracellular peptidoglycans. Peptidoglycan is the cell wall of bacteria that activates the nuclear factor this leads to the generation of cytokines and leads to the destruction of epithelial junctions. Okay, so this results in the separation of the junctions, and bacteria invades inside the cell. Second one is the disease associated node 2, that is ineffective at the defense mechanism, which means that bacteria can easily enter the epithelium. There is no defense by this group of genes, so bacteria, the luminal bacteria, easily enters into it. I hope you are all with me and understanding my point. Anything, if you have any query, you can ask me in the comment section. Okay, next is the mucosal immune responses. What is mucosal immune responses? That is, once bacteria enters through this, like the junctions were not tight, there were defect in the proteins, so they will enter into the mucosa, and once they are into the mucosa, we all know that whenever a foreign body enters, there is series of cascade or inflammatory responses, which is so. In this also, inflammatory cytokines are released, and these cytokines, for example tissue necrosis factor, interferon gamma, these all will lead to the damage of the cells that are enterocytes. Okay, now third one is the microbiota. Now the normal lining, what we see in the patients of IBD is the normal biota of we all know that there are 10 raised to power 12 organisms per ml of fecal material. So there is a profuse alteration in the patients of IBD. So these are few mechanisms, or we can say that pathology behind the IBD, patients of IBD, but there is not a single causative factor we can say. There are multiple factors responsible for it. Now let's just discuss the difference between now IBD is categorized into the Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. Okay, the Crohn's was named on the scientist whose name was Crohn, and ulcerative colitis means ulceration in the colon. First of all, let's just discuss Crohn's disease. After that, I'll discuss ulcerative colitis. The Crohn's disease, location of Crohn's disease is uh, anywhere. It can occur anywhere from oral cavity to the rectum, like at any point in the oral cavity, in the esophagus, in the stomach, or in the small intestine or large intestine. Okay, it can occur anywhere. This That's why it is called as regional enteritis. Okay, after that there is let's just discuss about the distribution. Now in distribution there are skip lesions, which means that all the inflammation or the degenerated tissue is present at a specific point. Like if I show you the picture, picture is like we have this stomach and all the lining between this is like I have drawn it. Now if there is degeneration at this point, okay, there may be degeneration at this point. Rest of all the epithelium is absolutely normal. Only at specific points there are lesions that are termed as skip lesions, that are separate delineated areas. Okay, afterwards there may be strictures because of the intense inflammation, edema and fibrosis. They may lead to the stricture formation. The third point is the inflammation is transmural, which means that it is involving all the three layers. Transmural means all the three layers: mucosa, submucosa, serosa. Okay, next is the pseudopolyps. Now what pseudopolyps means is that, see this diagram that is of medium Robbins, and this is the degenerated mucosa, that is all the tissue that is under inflammation, and this is the normal lining. So what we see is there are outgrowths, that is actually the normal mucosa, and there is, after that there is degenerated tissue. So the normal appearance is like like polyps, and these are not true polyps as it is the normal lining, but with the respect to the degenerated tissue it appears as a polyp. So this is termed as pseudopolyp, but it is mostly marked in ulcerative colitis. But as we can see, this is the picture of Crohn's disease. It is not that prominent. There are transmural inflammation, and these are not termed as polyps. Okay, this is what it is meant. After that there are ulcers are deep knife like, which means that you can see is they are deep knife like because it is involving all the three layers. Now there is lymphoid reaction is marked in Crohn's disease. Fibrosis, as all the inflammation involving transmural, so in lymphoid reaction is prominent, so there will be marked fibrosis as well. Granulomas are very prominent. Fistulas and sinuses means that there can be a connection between the two epithelial surfaces. What does fistula means? Connection of two epithelial surfaces. Okay, so which means that it can be between the bowel and the bladder. Okay, all right, bowel and the bladder, bowel and the vagina. So it will be termed as enterovesical, enterovaginal, and it can also occur. It can also create a connection with the skin surface, which means that enterocutaneous. I hope you all got my point. Afterwards, let's discuss it. The clinical representation. In clinical representation is the fat. All the fat and vitamin absorption occurs in the terminal ileum. So in Crohn's disease, we all know that the main point of affection is terminal ileum, mostly colon and ileocecal valve. So there will be marked defect in the absorption of fat and vitamins. There is less chances of malignancy in Crohn's disease. Reoccurrence is very common. So afterwards